Feilu Novel Network exclusive contract novel. Daqin. Investment returns life, Zulong's mentality collapses. Ying Chen travels to Daqin and becomes the seventh son of Zulong. And awakened the imperial system. First task. Help the general of the building tilt. However, what he didn't know was that Zulong Yingzheng also awakened a system. Investment feedback system. Choose 9 princes for the test. As long as the object he invests in wins first, he can receive corresponding lifespan feedback from the system based on the size of the test event. And also gave away a potential chart. First. Gongzichen, system evaluation. No one in a million. Second. Young Master Fusu. Ninth. Gongzi Hu Hai, system evaluation. Suggestions ***. And amidst each test, Ying Chen invented gunpowder, Zhuge crossbow, presented a commendation order, extinguished the remaining sins of the 6 kingdoms, and subdued all the princes and families. In the end, Ying Zheng, who had been investing in Yingchen, suddenly discovered. He has already been born. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Investment Feedback System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Daqin, Xianyang Palace. In the main hall. In front of the quaint desk, a majestic figure wearing an imperial robe sat here, exuding immense authority. Raise your hand and throw between your feet, a great imperial aura emanates. As if his place is the center of all things in heaven and earth. Eternal Emperor, Qin Shi Huang. At this moment, Ying Zheng was holding a brush in his hand, constantly reviewing the bamboo slips and memorials in front of him. His eyebrows, like a majestic dragon, slightly furrowed and his expression solemn. The entire hall was incredibly quiet. I can only hear the sound of bamboo slips lightly tapping. Beside him, Zhao glanced at the sky and whispered. Your Majesty. It's already the second shift, it's time to rest. As a close attendant to the emperor, he had to serve around Ying Zheng all day until the evening when Zhenggu went to bed before Zhao could return to his mansion. After speaking, Zhao lowered his eyebrows and remained silent. He knew that he only needed to remind him of his responsibilities. Whether to rest or not depends on your Majesty himself. If this great emperor in front of me were to be angry, even a little bit of anger would be unbearable for me. The main hall fell silent for a moment. After about half an hour, Ying Zheng looked at the last memorial in his hand and his expression became slightly hesitant. Suddenly, he asked Zhao. This time, I want to tour the east. Meng Yi requested the crown prince to be appointed as the governor of the country, but Li Si opposed it. Feng Quji remained silent. What do you think? Upon hearing this deep and majestic voice, and the extremely sensitive content that can easily get caught up in endless storms if not careful, Zhao trembled lightly all over, instinctively holding his breath. My face changed for a long time. At the next moment, Zhao gritted his teeth and leaned down, saying, Your Majesty, spring and autumn are in full swing, and the appointment of the crown prince. Is it too early? The hall remained silent for a long time. Zhao body trembled gently. Ying Zheng had a deep gaze and did not speak. After a moment, he put down the memorial and waved his hand. Seeing this, Zhao understood and quickly stood up respectfully, saying, Your Majesty, I retire. After leaving the palace gate, the cold wind blew. Zhao just realized that his back was completely soaked. Glancing back at the hall shrouded in darkness, Zhao eyes flashed with a hint of respect and fear. What a terrible! The emperor's heart is like a deep abyss. Accompanying you is like accompanying a tiger. After Zhao left, in the main hall, there was only Ying Zheng left with a candle. The spacious hall appears slightly lonely. The majestic figure, without realizing it, also hunched slightly. The true dragon is in its twilight. This emperor, who created an eternal empire and the greatest emperor in history, has finally reached the end of his life flame. I also want to be crowned as the crown prince. A soft murmur sounded. Ying Zheng closed his eyes, feeling the weakness emanating from his body, and silently sighed in his heart. He also wants to be crowned as the crown prince. So far, he has not seen any young master who satisfies him. The eldest son Fusu has a kind personality, but he believed in Confucianism, which contradicted the policies of the great Qin dynasty. If born in a peaceful era, it is still necessary to be a loyal ruler. However, at this moment, the great Qin was plagued by internal and external troubles, as well as turmoil. There were remnants of the six kingdoms with unwavering evil intentions, and the various schools of thought were constantly causing trouble. Outside, there were attacks from the Xiongnu, Baiyue, and Daiyue clans if there were no iron-blooded emperor to govern the country, so the eternal foundation of Daqin will be fiercely impacted. And the young son Hu Hai, although loved by him, it is only limited to affection. Too young, mentally incomplete. There is no qualification to be an emperor at all. As for the other young masters, they are also a group of crooked melons and cracked dates. Sigh. The heavy sighs echoed through the temple. Ying Zheng's expression was very tired. He felt that his energy was decreasing day by day, and his body was rapidly depleting. That day may not be far away either. In the absence of a suitable heir, at present, Daqin cannot do without him. That's also why he's launching his 5th East tour. To intimidate the world and those who do not obey. At least before I die, I can do one last thing for Daqin. Just as Ying Zheng was full of thoughts, suddenly, a cold, mechanical sound sounded in his ear. Ding, detected the host's intention, the system is turned on. Who's talking? Ying Zheng's eyes suddenly opened, and a chilling light flashed through his pupils. The terrifying imperial pressure suddenly spread. Your Majesty, no one speaks. Outside the palace, the guards of the Forbidden Army echoed back in a deep voice. No one. Ying Zheng's eyebrows furrowed, but before he could react, a pale gold system panel appeared before his eyes. Investment Feedback System, Host. Ying Zheng, remaining lifespan. 9 months and 27 days. Investment target. Not selected, event task. Not opened, novice task. Identify 9, investment candidates, reward. Ranking list, tip. This system. After reading the information on the panel, Ying Zheng's expression fluctuated, both surprised and delighted. Surprisingly, my lifespan is still less than 10 months. Based on this calculation, I estimate that after completing or even on my journey to the east next year, I will have nothing left. Fortunately, this so-called system actually has the ability to increase lifespan. From the introduction of the system, he should first select 9 young masters as investment candidates, and then send them to solve the event tasks released by the future system, which can also be considered a form of competition. If the young master who invested himself wins, so his lifespan will increase by the corresponding number of days. In theory, as long as most of his choices are right, even if he cannot live forever, it is not difficult to achieve immortality. Is this a fairy's magical tool? Ying Zheng's body trembled slightly and his face was excited. He has been searching for immortals for years, but surprisingly, a miracle has descended here at this moment. After a while, after forcibly calming down, Zhenggu began to ponder. So now, we need to find 9 young masters first. In this way, I can also use this to screen out the crown prince. Those who can pass the immortal weapon assessment will never be inferior. Well, it will be announced in the morning tomorrow. But which 9 young masters should we choose? With whispers, the main hall slowly sank into the darkness. Just tonight's purple way Emperor Star, extremely bright meanwhile, in the hall of Taro. Ying Chen also sat at the desk in a daze, holding a bronze mirror in his hand and repeatedly shining on it, with an expression of disbelief on his face. Lying trough. He has traveled. I traveled to the Great Qin and became the seventh son of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Gongzichen. Same name and surname as oneself, full name Yingchen. But the worst part is still this special period. Now is the 36th year of Emperor Shi Huang, the year before the downfall of Qin. At this time, the Great Qin was already on the verge of collapse, and the remaining evils of the 6 countries were watching, waiting for when Zhenggu would die. At that time, it will be their time for revenge. Afterwards, many bizarre events also emerged one after another. Ying Shoshin. Meteorite falling from the sky, Emperor Shi died and was separated by the earth. Hu Yi, the one who defeated Qin. Strange Jade Pendant, Zulong died this year. Looking for the elixir of immortality. 5th East Tour. This year has been a year of constant chaos. However, except for Yinghua Shoshin, nothing else has happened yet. Thinking of this, Ying Chen's expression was somewhat sad and angry. Good news, time travel has become the son of the Great Qin, with a noble status. Bad news, when Zulong sends it next year, if Hu Hai ascends to power and follows the historical process, he will slaughter all the young masters, so he will have to follow suit. No, we can't let the Great Qin be destroyed. Ying Chen's gaze cooled down. Since he arrived in Daqin, history cannot have happened according to its original trajectory. Maybe that supreme position is not impossible either. Suddenly, just at this moment, a prompt sound appeared in his mind. Tip. Host intention detected, Emperor system enabled. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. Empowering the Crown Prince. Zulong's Exam. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Emperor System, Host. Yingchen, Destiny Point. 0, Mall. Not opened, Prop. None, Main Task. Empire will tilt. This once majestic and domineering Great Qin Empire will eventually collapse under the death of its ancestor Zulong Yingzheng. Watching the system emerge, Ying Chen's eyes lit up, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but lift. The system has received the payment. From the introduction of the system, as long as he changes the fate of Qin and the wheels of history, he can obtain corresponding destiny points and purchase some items in the mall. No matter how big or small an event is. But there is one more question. Although he is the 7th son of Zhenggu, he has always been a little transparent and unknown, not as dazzling as Fusu, nor as playboy as other young masters. So how can we attract Zhengji's attention? Have a big fight. Yingchen began to ponder. He is considering. Should he first invent something to give to Qin a small shock for future generations? But what Yingchen didn't know was that, the opportunity came quickly, and it was on our own initiative. The next day, morning court. The golden sun slowly rises. When the warm sun shines, a group of arch of wooden architecture temples with cornices are stained with a layer of Phnom Penh, which look sacred and dignified. Xianyang Palace. A majestic figure sat on the throne. Below are the courtiers led by Li Si, Feng Quji, and Meng Yi. However, what sets it apart from the past is that, all the young masters who usually do not need to participate in court discussions have arrived. Ying Chen stood in the queue of the young masters, his gaze secretly looking upwards, feeling the majestic imperial aura, and his heart was deeply shaken. Is this the Zulong? I don't know what Zhenggu asked all the young masters to do. Ying Chen silently thought in his heart. The other young masters also lowered their heads and brows, afraid to make any mistakes. After a moment, the court meeting officially began. Ying Chen listened carefully while also observing the courtiers in the hall. Well, the person kneeling under the throne of Emperor Zhengge is not a good person at first glance. Probably the other person is Zhao Gao. The old man on the right should be Feng Quji. The person on the left who ranks first among all the officials, with a thin face, seems to be the left Prime Minister Li Si. What about Meng Yi from the Meng family? Just as Ying Chen was pondering, the court discussion was also proceeding rapidly. They are all important tasks in some places. It took a full hour before we reached the end. After all the ministers had finished reporting, a solemn voice suddenly came from above. The Eastern tour has been scheduled and will officially depart in March next year, but before that, I intend to establish the position of Crown Prince and oversee the country on my behalf. As soon as the words fell, the entire Xianyang palace fell silent for an instant. Then suddenly burst out with a huge force. Like a giant rock falling into the lake, startling towering waves. Crown Prince. Daqin is going to confer the title of Crown Prince. Below, upon hearing this sentence, Ying Chen's mind was buzzing. What is the situation? In history, where did the great Qin have any princes? If there were any, it wouldn't be Hu Hai's turn to seize the upper hand, even if Zhao Gao and Li Si usurped the edict. It is natural for the Crown Prince to ascend to the throne, as the former Emperor Dragon returned to heaven. So before his death, Zhenggu did not even confer the title of Crown Prince. Now this is the butterfly effect brought by oneself. And among the courtiers on the side, all the officials were celebrating with joy. The Crown Prince is certain, the foundation of the country will be stable. However, unlike everyone else's reaction, there are two more people. That's Li Si and Zhao Gao. Li Si is due to the conflict between Confucianism and legalism. If Fusu is appointed as the Crown Prince, the future Qin too will definitely prioritize Confucianism over legalism, and even abolish some of the Qin laws he wrote. As a leader of legalism, this is something he does not want to see. And Zhao Gao, it's just a simple fear of greed for power. He is currently serving Zhenggu, a close attendant to the first emperor, and his power can be said to be that even Li Si has to yield 3 points. But if Fusu becomes the second emperor, the Meng family, who had a grudge against him, grew up, and in addition, he persecuted many Confucian people in order to cater to His Majesty's preferences in the past, which led to Fusu also harboring great hatred towards him. His future fate is nothing but death. So both of them had a slight change in expression, almost unable to resist speaking out against it. But under the majesty of that domineering emperor, both of them chose to shut up in time and remain silent. But the matter is not over yet. Amidst the shocked and bewildered expressions of the officials, Ying Zheng sat upright on the throne, his gaze deep and expressionless as he spoke. In 3 days' time, I will gather all the young masters for the school entrance examination. And choose the best 9 young masters to test and hone them repeatedly before and in the next 6 months' journey to the east. Those who ultimately gain my approval and the approval of all officials will be registered as the Crown Prince. Boom! Another bomb fell into the sea. The ministers were shocked, but their first reaction was this is fair competition. All young masters have a chance. And Gongzi Fusu may not necessarily be the Crown Prince. Not only them, but also Yingchen is a spiritual shock. Sleeping trough. What kind of situation is this? Fair competition for the position of Crown Prince. Those with virtue reside there. Zheng, this is crazy giving opportunities. Isn't he thinking of this? Yingchen's lips widened and a smile appeared unconsciously. He has knowledge from 1,000 years later. There is a system. If you can't even secure the position of Crown Prince like this, why don't you just jump into the cesspool and commit suicide? Like Ying Chen, the faces of the other young masters were also filled with excitement and the ambition that was not supposed to be there. Although they know that their abilities may not be effective. But what if? From ancient times to the present, the word "just in case" has harmed many people. Just like buying a lottery ticket, what if I win? At this moment, the ministers celebrated and danced, while the young masters were secretly excited and trembling with excitement. For a while, the entire court became somewhat chaotic. Above the throne, looking at the scene below, while Ying Zheng was satisfied, he also frowned slightly. Although 9 young masters can be selected as investment candidates in 3 days, he can also officially start the event task and gain lifespan from it. But now I am also a bit disappointed when I see the young masters losing their composure. Emperor's wealth, at the very least, Mount Taishan will collapse in front of us and remain unchanged. Obviously, no young master can do it. But as he looked back and reached the 7th position, Ying Zheng's eyes suddenly lit up. I saw it there, a handsome and resolute young man stood still with a calm expression, holding a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, exuding a detached and confident aura. This stands out among a bunch of crooked melons and cracked dates. It's Ying Chen. Seeing this, Ying Zheng appeared to have no action on the surface. In my heart, I am quite satisfied. At least one young master has decent qualifications. But the true ability of the wheel will still be revealed in 3 days. After 15 minutes, the morning session ended. Tailuo Hall. After Ying Chen returned to the mansion, he began to ponder. The school entrance examination in 3 days is an opportunity to become a candidate for the crown prince, and he must seize it. I don't know what Zhenggu is taking. If it's game theory or military, it's okay. If it's 100 classics, then Anyway, I have to prepare early. Ying Chen is slightly worried. After all, this is not the final say. He still has to prepare for the worst. So Ying Chen's eyes sparkled with essence. He needs to invent a trump card that can change the whole world. As long as this is the case, only then can we occupy a significant position in Zheng Ji's heart. Someone. Go summon 2 craftsmen and act in secret. On the other side, in Hu Hai's mansion. Teacher, do we really have a chance? Don't worry, young master. I can guess 1 or 2 questions from your majesty. You just need to memorize them diligently. But there's nothing wrong, young master. Remember, your majesty loves you the most, and the position of crown prince. It's not impossible for us. In the mansion of the other young masters, just like Hu Hai, they began to speculate one after another. Except for the young masters, the ministers also walked around each other. For a while, the political situation of Daqin is turbulent. 3 days later, in front of the Qinchuan Hall, the young masters entered one after another. School entrance examination, it's starting. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Analects. Whispering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the vast palace, Ying Zheng, dressed in a black and golden dragon robe, sat on the imperial throne above, with a calm and confident expression. Amidst his demeanor, endless imperial majesty emanates. Below, after entering the main hall, the young masters faced their boundless and domineering father emperor with a look of fear. They walked to their seats and sat down carefully. Ying Chen also sat at his desk. Quickly looking around, Ying Chen felt a chill in his heart. On both sides, important officials such as Li Si, Meng Yi, and Feng Quji are also present. And Ying Chen's gaze fixed. At the forefront, a man dressed in a white robe and with a jade-like face sat upright, staring straight at him without any flaws in his movements. Is he Fusu? Ying Chen narrowed his eyes and guessed in his heart. Sitting in the first position, not seen 3 days ago, and wearing a white robe opposite to that of Shanghai in the Great Qin dynasty, it seems that there is no doubt that he is from Fushu. The main hall was silent. At this moment, Li Si on the left suddenly stood up, bowed to the young masters, and spoke in a low voice. Li Si has met all the young masters. Your Majesty has instructed me to set the questions for this school entrance examination. Everyone, listen carefully. After speaking, regardless of the color changes of the young masters, Li Si looked at Fusu and said directly. May I ask young Master Fusu, in the Qin laws of the great Qin dynasty? Listening to Li Si's question, Ying Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Qin LV had anticipated it. As a great Qin dynasty that established its country by law, how could Zulong not have studied the laws of Qin? When Li Si asked him, Ying Chen answered without hesitation. But he did anticipate it, the others were different. Except for a few others such as Fusu, the other young masters were all disheveled and embarrassed when asked, almost hiding their faces and running away under Li Si's contemptuous gaze. Until the last young master finishes, out of a total of more than 20 people, only 11 answered. The most important thing is that Li Si still asked about the most basic Qin laws and did not deliberately increase the difficulty. On the throne, a moment of disappointment flashed on Ying Zheng's face. He knew his sons were very useless, but he didn't expect them to be so useless. They didn't even know the Qin law that some common people knew. But it's okay. Gongzichen at least lived up to my expectations. Ying Zheng swept past Ying Chen's position, his gaze becoming softer. However, he made no statement. After Li Si sat down, on the other side, a refined middle-aged man stood up and spoke. I am pure and honest. Gentlemen, please listen to the question. Compared to Li Si, Chunyu is much more straightforward. However, when he stood up, it made all the young masters look very pale. What does it mean? Didn't father always dislike Confucianism? Is it so possible for Confucian people to set questions for them now? Lianingchen's heart sank as well. Unexpectedly. What does Zhenggu mean by his manipulation? Hate Confucianism, but let Confucian people host this important second exam. Chunyu didn't give everyone any time to react, so he started from Fushu in order to inquire about some Confucian classics. A gentleman is introspective and has no evil in his will. What a gentleman does. The benevolent are like shooting, and the shooting is right for oneself. He who conquers others with strength is not convinced by heart, but by strength. Ying Chen sat at the desk, carefully observed Ying Zheng's expression. After several young masters answered, he finally saw some clues. I understand. Ying Chen's lips slightly curled up, his heart was calm. Although Zheng Ji's joy and anger were not visible, he still analyzed a slight situation. After Chunyu asked a question, the first answer to Fu Su was obviously easy, and Zhenggu didn't have much expression, maybe he had already gotten used to it. But the few people behind, some answers were answered, but Zhenggu was not happy, and even frowned slightly. Some of them didn't answer, and Zheng Ji's face was expressionless, unable to show joy or anger, but without an expression, it represented the biggest problem. This is not what Zhenggu wants to see either. Whether it's the answer or not, Zhenggu is not satisfied. It's very tricky. But Ying Chen happened to come up with a third method. Gongzichen, please explain the meaning of Confucius' saying. Once you come, take it easy. The first 6 people have finished asking, Chunyu's gaze turned to the 7th position. Everyone else also looked towards Ying Chen. Ying Chen took a deep breath, under the stunned gaze of everyone, he said in a deep voice. Since you're here, let's bury yourself here. Chunyu. Li Si. Everyone. After hearing Ying Chen's explanation, everyone present was stunned and their minds were blank. What the hell? What kind of thing, is this something Confucius could say? Interesting. Ying Zheng's lips curved slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his expressionless face. However, this was just a moment. But he was still caught by Ying Chen. On the right, Chunyu's old face turned black and he asked again unwillingly. Gongzichen, please listen to the question. Upon hearing this, Ying Chen's face also changed. Old thing, it's endless, isn't it? Everyone else only has one question, why does he still have one? Targeting him. At this point, Chunyu had already spoken out. Confucius said, if you hear the Tao in the morning, you can die in the evening. I found out the way to your house in the morning, but you'll die at night. Ying Chen glanced at him and whispered softly. Chunyu's old face turned even darker. He suspected that a certain young master was threatening him, but there was no evidence. Beside him, Fusu was also stunned, looking as if his values had been greatly affected. Puff. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Li Si beside couldn't help but burst out laughing. Confucianism and legalism have always been in opposition. Now that Chunyu has become more embarrassed, he is very happy. After he laughed out loud, the other ministers also smiled to some extent, some couldn't help but laugh. Seeing this scene, Chunyu's expression was as black as the bottom of a pot. But he doesn't want to give up. We must turn around this crooked and evil trend, young Master Chen. Gongzichen, please listen to the question again. Zibuyu is strange and chaotic. Master doesn't want to speak, he uses his strange power to knock people unconscious. Confucius said. Do not do to others what you do not want to do to yourself. Confucius said. What one does not want, others cannot take it. Confucius said. If a gentleman is not heavy, he will not be mighty. Confucius said. If a gentleman hits someone, he must strike hard, otherwise he cannot establish authority. When I hear this, Chunyu's face was as black as ever, with a hint of greenness. Looking at Ying Chen's gaze was like seeing a piece of mouse droppings, still extremely foul-smelling. I was clearly disgusted by this misinterpreted slang. As for Lise, he laughed even louder. Well, in the end, Chunyu ran away more and more. Even the dozen or so young masters who didn't take the exam and ran away in anger may have vomited on the side. Alright, let's move on to the next item. Ying Zheng finally spoke up. Just a hint of a smile in that tone. Ha! Ying Chen breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. As expected, he guessed the same thing, answering the Confucian classics to the young master will be despised by the political brother. This is not a matter of knowledge, but an attitude and a grasp of the current situation. If you can't answer, maybe you really don't know, maybe you guessed something and intentionally did it, but this can only be considered barely qualified, so Zhenggu has no expression. Only with Ying Chen's words, truly appreciated by Zulong. However, whether it's Li Si or Chun Yu, they are just appetizers. The real test is still the next one. Zhenggu personally sets the question. The next moment, I saw Ying Zheng leaning forward slightly. Then he spoke in a low tone. 10 years ago, I swept across 6 countries and unified the world. However, so far, the influence of the aristocrats in the 6 countries still exists, and their family background is profound. They have a deep influence on the people of the original 6 countries. I want to completely eliminate them. What do the young masters have in mind? I can say for sure. Upon hearing this, all young masters were taken aback. What? Ask them about national affairs. They don't make it. Except for a few who showed a pensive expression, most of the young masters had a bewildered expression, with a look of, I can't understand what you're saying. Seeing this scene, Ying Zheng was already mentally prepared and couldn't help but sigh to himself. And on both sides of the main hall P.S. Old author of Daqin, with 100,000 saved manuscripts. Dear Yanzu, you can rest assured to watch. If possible, please provide some data support Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Zhao Gao's Joy. The Problem with Zulong. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Li Si and Meng Yi sat side by side. At this moment, when I heard Jing Ji's question, a slightly surprised expression appeared. Meng Shangqing, Your Majesty's move. Li Si's eyes flickered and he spoke softly. To be honest, he never expected His Majesty to use this question to take the school entrance examination. Although the 6 states were overthrown, the Great Qin was unified. However, there are numerous prestigious families and clans in various countries, all of which have a certain influence on the world, and the Great Qin could not kill them all, so they had to mainly surrender and submit. However, this approach also has drawbacks. That's these prestigious families, their influence on the local area is too great. In order for the Great Qin to truly unify the world, both in appearance and within, all traces of the 6 kingdoms must be eliminated, so that the people of the world only know the Great Qin and not the 6 kingdoms. The first step is to share the same text and train with Zhenggu. The second step is to exhaust the heritage of the original aristocrats of the 6 countries and completely eliminate their influence on the people. But that's just this step, whether it was Li Si, Meng Yi, or even the Duke of Man Chaogong, they never thought of a suitable solution. Your Majesty proposed during the examination today, Li Si felt that for these young masters, it was too far ahead. Next to him, Li Si hesitated to speak. Meng Yi smiled slightly and said helplessly. Your Majesty just wanted to take the opportunity to see how many young masters have some understanding of the affairs of the Great Qin state and the current situation. I didn't really want the young masters to answer. Upon hearing this, Li Si nodded. That's right, this problem is difficult for even the Gonggang officials in the court to solve, let alone with their abilities. If there is a perfect answer from the young master, Li Si, just stand upside down and eat the wine tripod in front of you. Time slowly passed by, it has been half a burning incense stick since Zhenggu raised the question. The young masters present, some were sweating profusely, some were scratching their ears and cheeks, some looked bewildered, and some even lay flat. Who can answer this question? As young masters, who doesn't eat, drink, and play all day long, and who goes to learn about those boring national affairs? Seeing this, Ying Zheng's face turned even worse. Special, if it weren't for his poor health, he would have wanted to build a few more small accounts. Suddenly, Fusu's body moved ahead. After standing up upright and bowing upwards, he spoke solemnly. Father Emperor, Confucius said, if one's body is upright, they will not follow orders, if one's body is not upright, they will not follow orders. The people are all hard-working, with continuous corvée, cruel criminal law, and heavy taxation. If the Great Qin could treat the people with kindness, even with the influence of the nobles of the 6 countries, the people of the world would sincerely submit to the Great Qin. Otherwise, even if the Great Qin was unified, the people's hearts would still not exist. My son's advice is to reduce taxes, lighten corvée labor, and eliminate heavy customs. The construction of the Aban Palace will be cancelled, and the Eastern expedition will also be a waste of labor and wealth, which can also be cancelled. Shut up. Ying Zheng frowned slightly and shouted softly. A suppressed and majestic aura suddenly expanded. The terrifying imperial aura swept across. Everyone's heart sank heavily, even ministers such as Li Si and Meng Yi quickly knelt down and said in unison. Your Majesty, calm down. Your Majesty, calm down. The young masters also spoke in great fear. Father, calm down. Of course, except for Fusu. After being interrupted by his own father, Fusu's face remained unchanged, but he sat quietly, his eyes slightly closed, and let out a soft sigh. He has said these words countless times, and Father Emperor has heard it countless times and is already very annoyed. But even so, he still has to say. Behind him, Ying Chen looked at Fusu calmly and shook his head secretly. How to say it? What Fusu said is both right and wrong. If Fusu were placed in later dynasties, he would inevitably be a benevolent ruler, but now the period of the Great Qin is too special, so special that no one can suppress him except for Ying Zheng. Above the throne, Ying Zheng waved his hand lightly. The courtiers below understood and stood up to return to their seats. At this moment, Ying Zheng's chest slowly rose and fell, with a hint of anger on his face. His eyebrows furrowed deeply, and his gaze towards Fusu was also cold with disappointment. The other party went to the Great Wall to hone their skills for several years. Surprisingly, this kind of personality has not changed at all. This is also the reason why he has always been uneasy and handed over Daqin to Fusu. Lower left, okay. Great. Zhao Gao's drooping face revealed a hint of joy. Fusu has angered your majesty again. Now, Hu Hai's chances are much greater. In fact, in the original history, when Ying Zheng was still alive and ruled over the Great Qin, Zhao Gao did not have that ambition, nor dared he have that ambition. After Zheng Ji's death, he dared to act recklessly. But now it's different. Zheng openly allows all young masters to compete. The winner is the crown prince. This gave Zhao Gaozi an unexpected hope. If Hu Hai were the second emperor, wouldn't his status be able to continue indefinitely? Previously, he opposed the early establishment of the crown prince. It is because once Fusu is appointed as the crown prince, his power will gradually weaken. Once Xinggu returns to heaven, his death will be almost at hand. Opposing is just self-deception, but now he has a chance to continue to shine. The premise is that Hu Hai can become the crown prince. For this goal, he can abandon everything to help Hu Hai rise to power. So this is also why Zhao Gao was very excited when he saw that Fusu had lost his imperial heart and other young masters were extremely useless. Wait, except for Fusu. That young master Chen is not easy either. We need to pay more attention. Zhao Gao's gaze secretly turned to Ying Chen, his expression somewhat alert. Obviously, he also noticed Ying Chen's performance before and His Majesty's subtle attitude towards him. There was a moment of silence in the main hall. Under the pressure of Ying Zheng, everyone lowered their eyebrows and eyes, even breathing cautiously, afraid of offending the angry emperor above again. Only two still hold their chests high and look up. Except for Fusu, there is only Ying Chen left. On the throne, Ying Zheng had already regained his composure, and his gaze turned towards Ying Chen. Seeing that the other party was neither humble nor aloof nor moved by external objects, he looked lost in thought and nodded in satisfaction. Gongzichen did not disappoint him. Based solely on this performance, one possesses a bit of imperial temperament. However, he probably hasn't figured it out yet. When he thinks it out, let him talk about it himself, and by the way, let's take a look at other young masters. Thinking in my heart, Ying Zheng's gaze turned to the other young masters. The Xianqi system gave him a beginner task of selecting 9 investment candidates, and he had to choose a few more, otherwise he wouldn't be able to activate the event task. Thinking of this, pondering for a while, he spoke directly and ordered a young master, asking, Gongzi Gao, come and talk about it. Below, I heard my father calling me. A thin man stood up, scratched his head, and awkwardly said, imprison them all. Ying Zheng's eyes twitched and he remained silent. Nonsense. If the imprisonment can be resolved, why would he waste so much effort? This number has been discontinued. Immediately after, he looked at his favorite Hu Hai. Hu Hai, you say? For a moment, everyone's gaze focused on Hu Hai. Under the gaze of everyone, Hu Hai slowly stood up and said in a calm tone. Father, Emperor, and courtiers believed that they should support the local aristocrats in various counties, and during holidays, let them replace the original Wangmen royal family in the 6 kingdoms. In this way, it can weaken the influence of the nobles of the 6 countries and strengthen the Qin dynasty's rule over various counties. After speaking, Hu Hai smiled. Last night, Zhao Gao made him memorize a lot of things. One of them is this. Not bad. Ying Zheng nodded, somewhat surprised. He did not expect Hu Hai, who had always been mischievous, to be able to speak such a truth. Although this strategy could not be implemented, his heart was commendable. Not like Gongzi Gao, this useless person. Seeing this, Zhao Gao's mouth twitched and he forcibly suppressed his smile. Fortunately, he was already prepared. Recently, your Majesty's mind has been shattered by this matter, and he didn't think of any good way to come out. He guessed that he might ask this question. And the strategy theory he taught Hu Hai was presented by a disciple. Although there are significant flaws in it, he also knows that His Majesty will not adopt it, but at least it can satisfy His Majesty with Hu Hai. Sure enough. At the same time, Ying Chen also came up with a plan. It's the legend that Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Startles everyone. Tuen and Ling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After determining the answer, Ying Chen sat at the desk, beginning to contemplate what Hu Hai had just said. For some reason, he always has a feeling like Hu Hai is hanging up. Can Hu Hai, with his stupid pig-like brain, come up with this thing? It's like preparing your notes in advance for an exam. But he's not worried either. Hu Hai's strategy, he firmly believed that Jinggu would not adopt it. Because it may seem perfect, there is actually a fatal weakness in it. According to the plan, the court should support local aristocrats in each county and county to suppress the famous families that annexed the 6 states, and ultimately eliminate the influence of the 6 states. But the other party never thought about it. Although the famous families and clans of the 6 countries may have disappeared, a large number of aristocratic families and clans have also emerged in each county, intertwined with the court, and even deeply intertwined with each other. Jinggu may be able to suppress it, but what about the 2nd and 3rd generations? One day, these aristocratic families will become giants. Raising tigers is a threat. What Jinggu truly wants is the supremacy of central imperial power, eliminating hidden dangers in the 6 kingdoms while also abolishing these prestigious families. And his strategy can be achieved. On the other side, after Ying Zheng asked Hu Hai, several young masters were ordered to answer, but they were all stuttering. Some even said, "Kill 5,000 people, isn't it certain?" Angry Zheng almost smashed the inkstone on the table. Calm down my mood. Ying Zheng's face was still a bit dark, and finally he turned his gaze to Ying Chen, with some anticipation in his heart. Fusu's answer still made him angry as usual, and the other young masters were extremely useless. Only a few of them answered as mediocre and barely qualified. Hu Hai was still decent. Will Gongzichen give him a surprise? Seeing Jinggu, it seems that Ying Chen's mouth slightly curled up, and in the next moment, under the surprised gaze of everyone, he stood up and saluted, saying, "Father, I have a plan. It can completely eliminate the hidden dangers of the 6 kingdoms within 1 year." As soon as the words fell, the entire hall is peaceful, and needles can be heard falling. Everyone's reaction is different. The young masters were all stunned and their eyes widened. These 7 young masters are usually a little transparent. Although they don't cause trouble, they don't have much ability. If it weren't for this school entrance exam, they would have almost forgotten about having this brother. What's going on today? Did it explode? Near the entrance of the palace, Hu Hai's face was full of disdain and he chuckled softly. "Humph, I used to misinterpret the Analects, but now I'm exaggerating them. It's just sensationalism. I want to see what you can say later." He doesn't believe it. The other party can teach him better than Zhao Gao. At the forefront, upon hearing Ying Chen's voice, Fusu couldn't help but turn his head. At first, he had little impression of Zhao Gaoqi's younger brother, but the other party's explanation of a few vulgar words really caught his attention. However, upon hearing that the hidden dangers of the 6 countries would be eliminated within a year, he shook his head and ignored them. This is simply a pipe dream. And among the ministers on both sides. On the left, Li Si slowly touched his beard, his face revealing a deep expression. Within a year. It's impossible. Even with those imperfect methods, it is impossible to eliminate the influence of the 6 countries within just 1 year, let alone perfect methods, which are even more difficult to implement. Meng Yi next to him also nodded. Since you have already boasted, I hope Gongzichen's strategy is not too bad. Otherwise, if your majesty gets angry, he may face considerable punishment. Li Si and Meng Yi are not very optimistic about Yingchen. Nonsense, how could an unnamed young master come up with a solution that neither the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty or the Duke of Gungun had come up with? Anyway, Li still said that sentence. If there is a perfect answer from the young master, Li's. Just stand upside down and eat the wine tripod in front of you. On the right side, at this point, Chunyu had already returned to the desk. After all, leaving without permission before may have been a moment of anger, but it was also an impolite act on your part. Your Majesty's broad-mindedness does not mean that he will not come back. However, not long after he sat down, upon hearing Ying Chen's words, the old man's face turned black and he couldn't help but snort coldly. It's not even possible within a year. If the method he proposed can really eliminate the hidden dangers of the 6 kingdoms within a year, I will jump directly from this Xianyang palace. Upon hearing this, the person next to him smiled and said. This place is over 10 feet above the ground, aren't you afraid of breaking your leg? Humph. Chunyu didn't speak anymore, just that expression, clearly not believing. Above the throne, Ying Zheng looked at Ying Chen below and saw his confident and indifferent expression. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice. Speak up. Everyone trembled and immediately fell silent. They all stared at Ying Chen with their eyes, curious, contemptuous, and watching the excitement with everyone's attention. Ying Chen ignored it and started talking confidently. Father, the dharma I offer is called Tuen and Ling. Just a paper edict is enough. Who knew that as soon as he said this, the entire hall became somewhat noisy. Fusu closed his eyes and ignored, while Hu Hai's mockery at the corners of his mouth became even more intense. The other young masters watched the commotion, and the ministers on both sides shook their heads and sighed, whispering incessantly. Chunyu's older face bloomed like chrysanthemums, and he really wanted to laugh. Even Zhenggu, who had expectations for Yingchen, at this moment, I was also slightly disappointed and shook my head secretly. He cannot deny that there is a perfect solution to this matter, but the ministers and he did not come up with it, but it is impossible with just one edict. Hey, this young Master Chen, I overestimated him. Zhao Gao also smiled and then stopped paying attention below. In his view, the only future opponent left was young Master Fusu, and no one else was to be afraid of. The atmosphere suddenly became a bit strange. It seems that everyone is waiting for Ying Chen to make a fool of himself. However, Ying Chen remained calm and smiled softly, saying, the best way to disintegrate the enemy is through internal strategy. When my father unified the 6 states, General Wang Jian used a scheme against Guo Kai of Zhao, causing him to frame and kill the famous General Li Mu, in order to break through the stubborn capital of Zhao. The same goes for now. The father emperor may issue an edict ordering all prestigious families to lift the rule that only the eldest son can inherit the family head. For the sake of fairness, all sons can inherit the family business, and this will be the case for future generations. So, the enemy will break through without attacking. The last sentence echoed in the palace, but no one spoke for a long time. Fusu at the forefront suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Ying Chen in shock, as if he had only met this 7th brother for the first time. Although the other young masters don't understand, but looking at the atmosphere and the expressions on everyone's faces, it's hard to tell. On both sides of the main hall, observing ministers such as Li Si, Meng Yi, Feng Quji, and Chen Yu, their faces were all dull and their eyes were wide-eyed, with a ghostly expression. Line trough. This commendation order with their minds, they naturally analyzed the effect of the grace order in the first place. If that's really the case, so these so-called prestigious families will all start an endless internal struggle due to inheritance rights, and a great family will be divided into several families, and their heritage and influence will naturally be weakened. By then, I want to increase the progress. They can also choose to take action, using methods such as soliciting, suppressing, and manipulating heirs, which can instantly cause a large family to fall apart, even tarnishing its reputation and losing the hearts of the people. And this, don't move, shoot. It weakened the power of the prestigious families themselves, eliminated their control over the people, and greatly strengthened the central imperial power. The hearts of the people of the world return to Qin, and we can wait day and night. And, most importantly, this is still a conspiracy. Even if the enemy knows, they have no way to defend themselves, and can only watch helplessly as their family weakens and eventually falls to the mortal world. Perfect. This grace order is extremely perfect. The ministers who thought of this all showed shocked expressions. If this was proposed by a cunning and influential minister, everyone could accept it, but young Master Yingchen is not yet 20 years old. Wisdom approaching demons. On the right, a thin old man smiled and said, "Dr. Chunyu, when will you jump? Remember to let me know." Chunyu's face turned pitch black as he grew older. Above the throne PS. Is there any Yanzu who can leave a message in the book review section? Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. Rewards. Dragon Pattern Jade Pendant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is there a grace order? Ying Zheng's expression was surprised, and his eyes kept flickering. These ministers can all think of the effect of the grace order at the first time, and he is naturally the same. Gongzichen did not disappoint me as expected. The perfect method that even the Gonggang officials in the court couldn't think of was actually come up with by my young master. Young Master Chen has great talent, it seems that I have paid less attention to him in my daily life. With countless thoughts in mind, but on the surface, Ying Zheng remained expressionless. However, upon closer inspection, a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. But this is just the beginning, and the real test is still ahead. I hope young Master Chen can keep it going. When the time comes. If Fusu really can't bear the heavy responsibility. The light in Ying Zheng's eyes flashed away. Actually, the biggest surprise today is not the grace order, but Gongzichen. He has another excellent young master. There's one more choice. It's time to end now. Watching the crowd on the field still unable to concentrate for a long time, Ying Zheng's mouth curved slightly. The school entrance examination is over, and I have decided. Gongzi Fusu, Gongzichen, Gongzi Jianglu, Gongziqing. Gongzi Hu Hai. 9 young masters will be tested in the next 6 months, and the winner will be appointed as the crown prince. Another. Gongzichen, I am very pleased to reward you with a dragon pattern jade pendant. A resolute and majestic voice echoed through the main hall. Upon hearing this, everyone's faces changed. The candidates for the first 9 young masters are not a big deal, the most important thing is the last one. Young Master Yingchen was rewarded with a dragon pattern jade pendant. This means that the other party has the qualification to freely enter and exit Xianyang Palace and meet Ying Zheng at any time. You should know that Xianyang Palace is a royal stronghold. So far, only 3 people have the freedom to enter and exit. One is Gongzi Fusu, the second is Shangqing Meng Yi, and the third is Gongzi Hu Hai. Fusu is the eldest son and has been trained by Ying Zheng as the crown prince, so he can enter and exit freely. Meng Yi was deeply trusted by Ying Zheng and even frequently rode alongside the emperor. Hu Hai is simpler because he is simply loved by Ying Zheng because he is likable. However, even the beloved Hu Hai does not have a dragon pattern jade pendant. But now, another 4th person has been added, Ying Chen. Simplicity is in the heart of the emperor. Left side, Li Si's pupils suddenly shrank, his expression horrified. But he immediately concealed it. Your Majesty. He had an uncertain guess in his heart that the seventh young master Yingchen was shining with sharpness and extraordinary temperament today. Can it be said that His Majesty has already changed beside him? Meng Yi also squinted his eyes and remained silent. As for Chunyu Yu on the right, his face was pitch black and his expression was constantly changing, as if he was engaged in a battle between heaven and man in his mind, as if conflicted with something. At this moment, Ying Chen suddenly stood up and said in a firm voice. "Thank you, Father, for your reward. My son must be diligent and hard-working, and not disappoint my father's expectations." Seeing this, Ying Zheng nodded in satisfaction. Not surprised by flattery or disgrace, with a firm mind, not bad with his leadership, the other young masters also stood up to salute. Ying Zheng waved his hand and said in a deep voice. "The school entrance examination has ended today, let's all go down. Li Si, Meng Yi, and Feng Quji, you three stay." As soon as the words fell, the young masters all salute and retire again, and so do the other ministers. Suddenly, a sudden mutation occurred. Chunyu suddenly stood up, gritted his teeth, and walked towards the outside of the palace door, with a look of sadness, anger, and death on his face. Running while shouting. "I promise to do it. I'll jump off now." Seeing this scene, everyone present was stunned. What situation? Of course, he still couldn't succeed in the end. As soon as he ran a short distance, he was stopped by the guard outside the door. The good news is to avoid breaking your leg, the bad news was that he was impolite in front of the hall and ordered by the dark-faced Ying Zheng to go back to bed and rest after 10 strokes. The results were similar. Returning to the hall of Taro, the calm expression on Ying Chen's face can no longer be tense. Ha ha ha. Unexpectedly, it caught Zheng's attention from the beginning and even received a dragon-patterned jade pendant. If I remember correctly, so far only Fusu has this thing, right? Alright now, as long as we can increase the weight in Jingji's heart, then from now on. Yingchen's mouth widened with excitement. He is not afraid of tests, he is afraid of not having the opportunity to showcase himself in front of Brother Zheng. At this point, the system also sends a message. Tip. The host has changed the history of the Great Qin on a small scale, and rewards Destiny. Point 3. Tip. The side quest, 9 Dragons Stealing Thrones, has been triggered. 9 dragons seizing the throne. The test of Ancestral Dragon winning the government is about to begin. In the competition of 8 young masters, they pass and ultimately win. For each test they pass, they will receive corresponding rewards. Kowloon takes the throne. Ying Chen smiled, "Isn't this a reward for nothing? This is not urgent. The most important thing now is to first think about what things are of great help to Daqin and what he can currently achieve." Qinchuan Palace. Ying Zheng sat quietly on the throne alone. At this moment, Li Si, Meng Yi, and others also left one after another, and even Zhao Gao was waved back outside the door to guard. He's going to start checking the artifacts. System, I have completed the beginner task. Tip. Novice task completed, rewards have been issued. Prop, ranking list. Real-time ranking and status of investment candidates can be viewed, and beginners can obtain a free potential assessment after completing tasks. Potential assessment. Ying Zheng raised his eyebrows. After reading the introduction below, he suddenly realized. It turns out to be a celestial tool system that evaluates the potential of each young master. Of course, this also allows him to refer to it. After all, in event tasks, investment can only be made once. Choosing which young master is important, and the higher the potential, the better. Thinking of this, Ying Zheng was delighted in his heart. System, open the potential chart. Ding, the system is currently evaluating. It took about a stick of incense before the pale golden system box reappeared. Potential list, first. Gongzichen Potential Index. Recommendation Index. Investment return. System evaluation. No 1 in a million second. Young Master Fusu Potential Index. Recommendation Index. Investment return. System evaluation. How Zaiwu 9th. Young Master Hu Hai Potential Index. Recommendation Index. Extremely not recommended investment return. None system evaluation. Impossible, tip. 5 stars are full stars, decreasing accordingly. Tip. The potential list can only be used as a reference. There are countless events, and when adapting to circumstances, the person with the highest potential may not be as good as the person with the lowest potential. A total of 9 potential rankings emerged out of thin air. There were 2 things that surprised Ying Zheng. One is Gongzichen. He didn't expect that the evaluation of Ying Chen by the immortal weapon system would be so high, all full of stars. And the system evaluation is also 1 out of 10,000. As for the second one, it is his favorite young master Hu Hai. Does the other party rank last? Even some clumsy young masters in the middle who used to recharge are not as good as them. And the potential index only has 1 star, and the recommendation index is extremely not recommended, with no investment return. The system evaluation is foolish. It's simply incredibly tragic, useless. How could this be? The other party's performance today is clearly quite good. What they said. Wait. Ying Zheng frowned lightly. The evaluation of immortal artifacts is definitely correct. So the problem is only with Zhao Gao. Zhao Gao is Hu Hai's teacher, and the strategies he mentioned may have been memorized by him before. Zhao Gao often serves him around, so he probably guessed something. Thinking of this, a hint of displeasure flashed in Ying Zheng's eyes. The ministers in the court support a certain young master who doesn't care, but deceiving him through this means touches his taboo. If it weren't for this potential ranking, he thought that Hu Hai had indeed made progress and was still kept in the dark. After a long silence, Ying Zheng suddenly spoke in a deep voice. Someone. I hereby declare that Zhao Gao, the commander of the Zhongche prefecture, will serve me day and night. In recognition of his hard work, I have instructed him to cultivate himself in the mansion for 1 month. There is no need to attend this month's court meeting. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Event task open. Refugees entering Xianyang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The news that Zhao Gao was ordered to stay at home for a month to recuperate, it quickly spread to the ears of all the officials. Many ministers secretly laughed to themselves, saying that Zhao Gao relied on His Majesty's favor to show off his power, not even Li Si, Meng Yi and others, let alone some officials below. Most people are schadenfreude. What does this represent? It must be because Zhao Gao did something that angered His Majesty. It's best if you lose favor. Zongchu Lingfu. Zhao Gao's face turned pale as he collapsed on the bed, drinking the traditional Chinese medicine handed over by the maid beside him, his hands trembling. Beside the bed, Hu Hai comforted with a caring tone. Teacher, fortunately, Father saw your hard work and gave you a 1-month vacation, otherwise I wouldn't have known how long this illness would have been delayed. Teacher, take good care of yourself. After a month, Father will naturally summon you back. Upon hearing Hu Hai's words, Zhao Gao almost sprayed out the Chinese medicine he drank in his mouth. Special, I was scared sick by your father, okay. But he also knew that Hu Hai's mind had always been so simple, even foolish, that the other party probably could only think of that. Ignoring Hu Hai's silly expression, Zhao Gao's eyebrows furrowed deeply, and a regretful expression appeared on his face. So I was wrong from the beginning. I thought teaching Hu Hai to memorize the answers in advance was a competition with the young masters, but I didn't expect it to be a crime of deceiving the emperor, so I was punished and warned by His Majesty. But this also proves one thing, Your Majesty does not oppose the struggle between the young masters, otherwise I would not be such a small punishment. This can be utilized. Thoughts were generated in Zhao Gao's mind one by one. When the imperial decree arrived last night, he was indeed startled at first. He was cold all over on the spot, thinking that he had lost his imperial heart. So under nervousness, he fell seriously ill. Now, thinking about it, it should be Your Majesty's slight warning. After understanding this point, it seems like something has come to mind again. Zhao Gao's expression darkened once again, and he whispered to Hu Hai. Young master, you have become one of the candidates for the crown prince. As Your Majesty's test begins, according to my judgment, your opponents are only two people. One is young Master Fusu, and the other is the seventh young Master Ying Chen. And his threat is the greatest. This person suddenly showed his sharpness. Xianyang Palace, Early Dynasty. Above the throne, Ying Zheng, still dressed in a black and gold dragon-patterned imperial robe, sat majestically above, quietly listening to the recitation below. Your Majesty, drought has occurred in many parts of Daqin, causing heavy losses. Your Majesty, the county officials are requesting disaster relief and food supply. Your Majesty, countless refugees and disaster victims are flooding into Xianyang. Your Majesty, the governor of Sanchuan County, Liu, has reported that a swarm of locusts has been discovered in the county, and there may be locust infestations in the future. Please make a decision, Your Majesty. Basically, what ministers report is a drought. And this drought has already caused some damage. The disaster victims from several counties close to Xianyang, such as Sanchuan County, Yingchuan County, Shangjuan, etc., all came to Xianyang to beg for a meal. After all, it is the capital of the great Qin state, so it is better to wait in place and die. On the throne, Ying Zheng had a deep gaze. At this point, his attention was no longer focused on the court. Because just now, the system finally released the first event task. Event. Drought and famine refugees, importance. Task. Assign disaster relief to each investment candidate, with a time limit of 7 days. Finally, the person with the highest completion rate and refugee favorability will win. Feedback lifespan. 3 months, tip. The higher the importance of an event, the more feedback the lifespan value. Tip. Please select investment candidates for the host. Seeing this, Ying Zheng's face was serious. Although there was only one star in this event, how could he know how many events could happen in total? My lifespan is already less than a year. Nature is to cherish every investment in every event. Which young master to invest in? Whether referring to the potential list or based on the young master's performance, the only investment targets are two people, young Master Fusu and young Master Chen. Gongzi Fusu has a kind and kind-hearted personality. Investing in him for disaster relief is definitely the first choice, but Gongzichen. Ying Zheng's eyebrows furrowed slightly, his face revealing contemplation. If there is no potential ranking, he definitely chose Fusu as his investment target. Although Fusu's philosophy does not align with his, and his ability to handle affairs is not very good, he is far inferior to other young masters in this regard to the people, and he can rest assured that disaster relief can be entrusted to him. But suddenly, a young Master Chen appeared in the middle. After some thought, Ying Zheng made a difficult decision. Investment wins. Based on what the other party said today, they are qualified to make him gamble once. I choose Gongzichen. Ying Zheng said in a deep voice in his heart. Ding, successful investment. Just as the conversation finished, the system panel appeared. Investment feedback system, host. Ying Zheng, remaining lifespan. 9 months and 24 days. Investment target. Gongzichen, event task. Drought and wilderness refugees, feedback lifespan. 3 months, ranking. Opened, updating in real time. After scanning the system, Ying Zheng's attention shifted back to the court. After seeing that the courtiers had finished reporting and were waiting for his reply, Ying Zheng remained silent for a moment before slowly speaking up. Someone, give an order. Order the county governors of each county and county where the drought occurred to open warehouses and release grain, mainly to provide relief to the disaster victims. Also, pacify the local people. If there is a riot, local officials will handle it according to Qin's laws, and there will be no amnesty for killing. After a pause, I haven't waited for the ministers to receive their orders yet. He continued. Also, I am determined. The refugees who fled to Xianyang this time were all assisted by 9 young masters, with Feng Qiji and Meng Yi working together. This is my first test, and the best performing young master deserves a great reward. This sentence is like a giant stone entering the water. The courtiers were all trembling with a solemn expression. The prince's war is about to begin. After about half an hour, the morning session ended. And today's news from the court spread like a blizzard to the outside, causing a huge uproar in an instant. Whether it's ministers or ordinary people, they are all shocked. They are not concerned about drought. Every year in the Great Qin dynasty, such disasters occur, such as droughts, floods, food shortages, or local dragons turning around. Therefore, even if unexpected, everyone is not surprised. What shocked them was that the first test had begun. The fair and upright struggle for the crown prince by the first emperor, Ying Zheng. Tailuo Hall. Ying Chen took the imperial edict from the eunuch in the palace with a calm expression. Looking at the content of the edict, he also began to ponder in his heart. To provide disaster relief for refugees. 9 young masters working together for disaster relief, with a time limit of 7 days. Can the one who performs the best receive a heavy reward from Brother Zheng? Ying Chen's mouth curled up. The meaning behind this is not as simple as disaster relief alone. Since this is the test for Brother Zheng, what he wants to see should be the ability of the young masters to handle things, be adaptable, and have a way of thinking, and so on. Even a glimpse reveals the whole leopard. By regulating and governing these refugees, it can be inferred whether this person has the qualifications to govern the country. It truly deserves to be the ancestor dragon. With just a small disaster relief, one can also explore so many ways. In this way, I can't limit myself to disaster relief anymore. We need to find a way to make future generations. Ying Zheng sat at the desk, lost in deep thought. At the same time, all parties left Prime Minister's mansion. Master, are we really not doing anything? An old man dressed as a butler bowed slightly and respectfully said. His Majesty has appointed the young masters to provide disaster relief, and the Right Prime Minister Feng Qiji and the Upper Minister Meng Yi have all taken on certain responsibilities. It is theoretically impossible for such a great event to happen without the presence of the Lord alone. Master Mingming is more valued than Right Prime Minister Feng Zhubing. Upon hearing this, Li Si shook his head. He seemed to have thought of something and sighed slowly, saying, Your Majesty's Emperor's heart is unpredictable. If I'm right, this disaster relief will test the young masters on one hand and the courtiers on the other. The courtiers. The old butler was puzzled. Yes, my courtiers. Your Majesty wants to see how many people will intervene in the dispute for the heir apparent, and how many people will cause trouble from it. As for me, it's the same. I have a disagreement with the young Master Fusu, which is well known. So I entered the palace yesterday and took the initiative to avoid this matter with your Majesty. Speaking of which, Li Si showed a mysterious smile. Seeing this, the old butler's body trembled and he suddenly realized. Master, is this seeking benefits and avoiding harm? And, I had already guessed that your Majesty would use this as a test. And the other party Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. Starting Disaster Relief. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Meng Fu, Taitsang Ling Wang Sun looked at Meng Yi in shock, his face dull, and he asked in confusion. Meng Shangqing, are we really not doing anything? Well, don't do anything. Across the street, Meng Yi held a wine cauldron in his hand and nodded. Upon hearing this, Taitsang Ling was foolish. What is the situation? Isn't your Majesty ordering disaster relief? As an internal historian of grain control, he was in charge of various grains, equivalent to the later Ministry of Revenue. In the past, they were responsible for distributing and arranging disaster relief affairs. Although this time it is the responsibility of 9 young masters, but they also need to assist on the side, at least they need to come up with a charter. For example, how much food to prepare, how much to distribute in a day, how to distribute disaster victims, how much is expected to be consumed in total, and so on. However, Lord Meng Yimeng said he didn't do anything. Just waiting for the 9 young masters to come knocking decide on how much food to eat and arrange for disaster victims on your own. What if it gets mixed up? Young masters are naturally fine, isn't he going to be punished for a serious crime? Thinking of this, Wang Sun began to shiver. Immortals fight, mortals suffer. Don't worry, no matter what, it's none of your business. Your Majesty will keep an eye on it. Meng Yi gave a gentle smile. The battle of the Crown Prince, don't talk about the other party, even he dare not move. Leaving aside the possibility of standing in the wrong position, there may be a risk of being wiped out in the future. Even if the bet is right, countless conspiracies and schemes must have been used in this process. The involvement is too great, and we must consider your Majesty's attitude. If your Majesty is not happy, it will be unlucky. In no time, after leaving the Mongolian mansion, Wang Sun thought for a moment and rushed towards the right Prime Minister's mansion to see if Feng Xiang's attitude was the same as that of Lord Meng. But he was destined to be disappointed. Compared to Meng Yi, Feng Quji is even more straightforward. Go straight to the back and close the door to greet guests. Ignoring it, I seem to have forgotten even my own responsibilities. Wang Sun now understands, this disaster relief involves all the young masters, it's simply a hot potato. So, in less than an hour. Wang Sun was sick, very seriously, almost leaving this beautiful world on the spot. When Meng Yi heard it, he couldn't help but shake his head and chuckle. In each young master's mansion, all the young masters are discussing with their disciples. The problem they are facing now is how much food to use for disaster relief. Since it is a test, of course, the less it is, the better. In their concept, whoever uses the least amount of food to help the refugees overcome this drought is a victory. Of course, the premise is that no one can die and no riots can occur. So most of the young masters, after discussion, surprisingly came up with a unified data. 20 stones. If measured in kilograms, it would be 2,400 kilograms. But in modern units, it's 1,200 pounds. This number is just right, can save food to the maximum extent, and still starve to death. Within the CRRC prefectural office, teacher, can I not go to disaster relief? Hu Hai sat at the desk with a reluctant expression and whispered. Across from him, Zhao Gao's face was still somewhat pale, as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. Upon hearing Hu Hai's words, Zhao Gao's mouth twitched and he bit his teeth slightly, saying, "No way." It seemed that he was afraid of scaring Hu Hai, but Zhao Gao said kindly. "Young master, rest assured. You just need to step forward at the beginning and show your attitude to your Majesty. The specific disaster relief affairs in the future can be entrusted to the servants. As long as no one dies, there will be no problem. But you have to remember to treat those disaster victims later." Zhao Gaoyuan kept telling the details. In his opinion, disaster relief is such a simple matter that there is nothing to say. Just follow the process, but at the beginning, your Majesty was watching and wanted to make a good start. In fact, with Hu Hai's intelligence, he doesn't trust the other party to personally go to the disaster relief. At this time, there were already officers and soldiers in the city of Xianyang, gathering all the disaster victims who came to Xianyang and temporarily placing them outside the city, dividing them into 9 areas, waiting for the young masters to come and collect them. There are a total of 9 young masters, approximately 1,000 people per person. Outside the city gate, nearly 10,000 people sat or lay with a mournful expression, their faces tinged with numbness, despair, and pain, as if they had lost hope in the world, like walking corpses. Suddenly, the city gates slowly opened. The spirit of over 10,000 refugees was shaken, all looking towards that. They were informed last night that His Majesty has issued an order for his 9 sons to come and provide relief for the refugees who have come to Xianyang. This makes everyone overjoyed. Young Master. That is a towering existence that cannot be imagined. It's a great honor to come and help them now. The ancestral tomb is emitting green smoke. Help. At this moment, a man dressed in a white robe, elegant in temperament, and with a jade-like face appeared, followed by a group of Confucian scholars. Young Master Fusu. Go and choose some elderly, weak, and young women. Fusu seemed unable to bear to see such a tragic situation, with sympathy and pity in his eyes. He let out a soft sigh and instructed the people next to him. Not long after, more than 1,000 elderly and weak were silently taken away by Fusu. These are people who are not easy to survive, and he must try his best to ensure their lives, even if the cost is high, and even if the test is lost, it doesn't matter. Just rely on your true heart. After the departure of Fusu, the second one to come here is Hu Hai. After walking to an area inhabited by refugees, the nearby city guards shouted loudly. This is Gongzi Hu Hai. From today on, he will be in charge of you. Unlike the calm Fusu, as soon as Hu Hai came up, he also shouted loudly. Cough. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not say anything unnecessary. I know that you must have some requests and can speak as much as possible. As long as you don't go too far, but have some requests, everything will be satisfied. As soon as the words fell, the entire venue is becoming a bit restless. This young master. Is he willing to talk to them and still fulfill their demands? It seems that he should be a kind-hearted young master. Thinking of this, the refugees had a movement in their expressions and began to roar in a hurry. For a moment, a dense sound came out. Young master. I am seriously ill, please help me. We haven't eaten anything in 2 days, and my child, he. Please, young master. The voice is like the blood of a rhododendron weeping, extremely mournful. When someone takes the lead, the other refugees all knelt down and kowtowed heavily, saying, Young master, please give me something to eat. My child has not eaten anything for a day and is about to starve to death. Please save my child first, young master. Young master, my father has contracted a stubborn illness. Young master. For a moment, nearly 1,000 refugees all knelt on the ground, howling in pain and sorrow. They just want to live. The scene is becoming increasingly restless, and some refugees want to come over. Seeing this scene, the faces of the city guards changed greatly. Suddenly, he pulled out his long sword from his waist and whispered. Step back. All step back. Who dares to collide with the young master? Kill without mercy. Suddenly, a look of fear appeared in the eyes of the refugees. Upon seeing this, Hu Hai's face lit up with joy. It's time for him to act. Stop it all for me. Hu Hai angrily got off the car and kicked several city guards aside, then said with a gentle expression. Don't rush, everyone. In this way, you go to my house to settle down first, and then we have cooked congee. We should fill our stomachs first. Upon hearing these words, nearly 1,000 people showed a touch of emotion. This young master, you are truly benevolent. And the refugees from other regions are all envious of the people in this area, why don't they have that luck? Finally, under the escort of several city guards, The refugees in this area are all heading towards the city. Hu Hai's originally gentle expression changed, his eyebrows furrowed deeply, and he looked at the backs of the dirty and chaotic refugees, with a strong sense of disgust and rejection in his eyes. The teacher is really. Why should I personally come to see these lowly people and say so many disgusting things? Forget it, I'll just hand it over to those servants in the future. Go back and take a nap first. In the following hour, several young masters have come to choose the refugee area. However, there is an area that no one has chosen. Because the people in this area are tall and strong, with some missing arms and legs, they should have been soldiers who retreated from the battlefield. The reason why the young masters did not choose them, one is definitely eating too much, and the other is not easy to control. If these people get into trouble, it's definitely not easy to suppress them. Unlike other thin and weak refugees, they won't cause trouble at first glance. So it's only at the end. Until then, Ying Chen slowly appeared. When he arrived at the only refugee area, he first looked up and down at these people, and the first sentence he spoke made everyone's face change. I don't know. P.S. The pace of this book is relatively slow, and the exciting parts will be tested later. As the test begins, Yu Yanzu can be patient and not disappoint you. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. Ying Zheng's Doubts, Strange Young Master Chen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I won't give you food for free. Ying Chen slowly spoke up. As soon as these words are spoken, including several city guards and over 1,000 refugees, their expressions changed greatly. Will they not be given free food? Is that asking for money? But they are now displaced, how can they still have money? Is this young master unwilling to help them? In an instant, despair, anger, and dullness lingered in the hearts of the refugees. The city guard, on the other hand, is afraid of these refugees rebelling. If there is any mishap on the part of your Majesty's young master, even if they suffer a little harm, then they will all be beheaded. But then, Ying Chen once again said in a deep voice. To get food from me, you have to put in some effort. But unlike other young masters, in my place, as long as you put in enough labor, you can obtain equivalent food, even. It's not impossible for one person to get 1 kilogram of rice a day. Of course, you can also exchange the grain for copper coins. That's it. If you don't want to, you can switch to another young master. Upon hearing this, everyone's faces changed greatly once again. 1 kilogram of rice per person per day. It's impossible. Not to mention the great Qin dynasty, from ancient times to the present day, we have never heard of a disaster relief program that could give them a pound of rice. This is still a daily amount. And if you don't want food, you can exchange it for copper money. When did the Qin have this rule? But the other party is a young master. I shouldn't have deceived them either. Just when everyone didn't know how to answer, a young man dressed in grey cloth and dirty all over, but with exceptionally bright and lively eyes, stood up and respectfully said. Excuse me, young master. What kind of labor do we need? Upon hearing this, Ying Chen squinted his eyes. This person. If he guesses correctly, he should be a scholar. I just don't know why I fell into exile. After observing for a moment, Ying Chen calmly replied. It won't tire you to death. On the contrary, it also brings great benefits to you. The young man remained silent for a moment and asked again. Is what the young master said about the grain true? Ying Chen nodded and glanced at the refugees ahead. I have a rough idea in my heart. It seems that these refugees have taken this young man as their leader. Thinking of this, he became even more curious about the young man. It seemed that he was not just an ordinary person, otherwise he wouldn't be able to control so many refugees. Neither side spoke again, the air suddenly fell into silence. After a long time, the young man across from him took a deep look at Ying Chen and finally knelt down, bowing solemnly with a serious expression. Grassroots citizen Li Ji, thank you for your great kindness, young master. As soon as he moved, the refugees in the rear also knelt down with great joy. Grass people, thank you for your great kindness, young master. They know, if what this young master said is true, then they can have enough to eat in a day and no longer have to endure the pain of hunger. This is a treatment that other refugees far from have. If calculated by 1 pound, they eat the same amount of rice as other refugees for 7 days in a day. And all that is put in is just labor. But how can labor in other places receive such generous treatment? That's why they want to thank you so much. Not bad. Ying Chen nodded, he was also very satisfied. These refugees may be weak, but they are also very strong. Just met my own requirements. Suddenly, under the stunned gaze of everyone, he slowly spoke up. Now, my first task for you is build your own house. Everyone is stagnant, building houses for themselves. Time slowly arrived at noon. At this point, all the young masters have chosen the refugees they are responsible for. What they don't know is that, starting from Fusu, everything in the morning, every young master's actions, including every sentence, were recorded in detail and sent to the Xianyang Palace. Qinchuan Palace. Ying Zheng was dressed in a black and golden imperial robe, with a majestic figure. He looked seriously at the bamboo slips sent by the eunuch. Above this is your performance in the morning, young masters. Gongzi Fusu has chosen over 1,000 people who are old, weak, young, and physically disabled. It's his personality. Ying Zheng was not surprised. Fusu has always been so kind-hearted. He looked down again, when Ying Zheng saw Hu Hai's actions, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, and he couldn't help but nod with satisfaction. Young Master Hu Hai, it seems that he still has a compassionate heart. Not bad. I looked at a few more young masters, seeing that Ying Chen had not yet won. Ying Zheng's patience gradually ran out and he simply pulled his gaze to the end. But when he saw the content above, but his brow furrowed. By putting in enough labor, one can obtain equivalent food. 1 person a day. 1 kilogram of rice. Even exchanging grain for corresponding copper coins. Ying Zheng's heart was filled with doubts. If you want these refugees to work as laborers, just requisition corvée directly, why spend so much money in food? If it were any other young master, he directly issued an order to reprimand. But Gongzichen is different. Leaving aside the fact that the other party presented a commendation order yesterday, his skills shocked everyone, and his evaluation in the system was also extremely high. The other party should not make unfounded remarks. What exactly is the purpose of this? After thinking for a moment, Ying Zheng said in a deep voice. Summon young Master Chen to meet you. Yes, your majesty. Next to him, an old eunuch bowed and retreated. In no time, Ying Chen was calmly led into the palace. Inside the hall. I pay my respects to my father, the emperor. Sit down. Yes, father. Ying Chen sat at the table below. However, Ying Zheng did not immediately speak up, but continued to review the bamboo slip memorial in front of him. Ying Chen also sat quietly with a calm expression. For almost half an hour, Ying Zheng rubbed his wrist and put down his brush. That's when I looked down, seeing Ying Chen sitting upright with a calm expression. He waited for almost an hour without any impatience. Ying Zheng nodded in satisfaction. This morning, you all went to meet the disaster victims. Tell me your thoughts. Upon hearing this, Ying Chen's heart trembled. It seems that all his actions have been reported. Jinggu didn't call other young masters, he only called me. It's probably because of my words that he was curious about. No, it could also be disappointment, so he called me over to explain. Anyway, this is an opportunity. Ying Chen's eyes lit up with a flash of brilliance. Seize this opportunity. To gain the recognition of this great emperor, it is not enough to rely solely on one or two outstanding performances. You must constantly demonstrate your abilities and means. After pondering for a moment, Ying Zheng whispered back. Father, my ministers believe that if disasters occur, relying solely on the court's relief efforts is not enough. We should implement the principle of work as a substitute for relief and distribution according to work. Using work as a substitute for relief and distributing according to work. Ying Zheng raised his eyebrows. The literal meaning of these 8 words, combined with the other person's mourning words, instantly made him understand the general meaning. But he didn't speak, just gestured to continue. Yes. Ying Chen began to explain in detail. Using work as a substitute for relief refers to the allocation of food and money by the court, allowing some disaster victims, refugees, or those who find it difficult to survive to participate in the court's engineering construction, and then providing them with corresponding compensation. Distribution according to work refers to giving them different amounts of money and food based on their level of labor. Upon hearing these words, Ying Zheng frowned deeply. He understood, but why did he do this? Those who can be directly conscripted for corps AE labor, the cost of money and food is not much, just feed these people. Although he didn't understand, Ying Zheng didn't immediately reject it. The Tuen and Ling was proposed by Ying Chen, and he didn't feel that his son was talking nonsense. It probably had some deeper meaning that he didn't even think of. Seeing the other person's expression, Ying Chen smiled slightly. Zhenggu is still limited by the times. So, it's his turn. Chapter 10. Ying Zheng's shock. Work for relief. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, Ying Zheng's deeply furrowed brow relaxed slightly, his gaze suddenly deepened, and his expression became serious. Using work as a substitute for relief. Do you want to use this method to appease the disaster victims, win the hearts of the people all over the world in the name of the court, and minimize the occurrence of riots and rebellions? Upon hearing this, Ying Chen's whole body trembled. It's only been a while, and Zhenggu actually guessed the most important meaning among them. Truly worthy of the ancestral dragon, this vision. Ying Chen was secretly shocked. No wonder the other party could propose, books are the same, cars are on the same track. His vision has surpassed this era for at least hundreds of years. Father's mirror. For the great Qin, this method has 4 benefits. Oh. Speak up. Ying Zhenglu was slightly taken aback, somewhat surprised. Did he just say one of them correctly? There are 3 more interesting ones, Father, once this law is implemented. Firstly, providing relief to disaster victims. During times of disaster, this law can help disaster victims avoid death to the greatest extent possible and prevent their riots. Secondly, support the poor. The court initiated construction projects and called on the poor to work as laborers, so that they could obtain stable income, improve their living conditions, alleviate poverty, and ensure that everyone had food to eat. Thirdly, national stability. Throughout history, famine has been a major cause of instability in the world. Because the people could no longer survive, it led to rebellion and turmoil in the court. And once the people live a prosperous life and each family has surplus food, even if it happens to be enough to make a living, who would think of plotting rebellion? Fourth, a sense of belonging. By providing work as a relief, thousands of people can build projects in various counties of Daqin, which can enhance their sense of belonging to Daqin and completely return to their homeland. They no longer aspire to the 6 kingdoms. In fact, the 4 together only mean 1. Strengthen the central imperial power. Let the people of the world know that the great Qin dynasty can make them live a peaceful life and live a simple life, that's enough. Once that happens, even if there are remnants of rebellion from the 6 countries, these common people will not follow, and even take the initiative to help the great Qin eliminate them. Throughout ancient dynasties, if it weren't for the court forcing the people around the world to complain, who would have rebelled? In the hall, the atmosphere is peaceful. After Ying Chen finished speaking, he stopped speaking. And Ying Zheng sat on the throne in a daze, his eyes slightly distracted, obviously his thoughts had already diverged somewhere. After a long time, Ying Zheng just came back to his senses, his heart was shocked. Gongzichen. Surprisingly, he has such a vision. Not only did it hit the nail on the head and directly pointed out the drawbacks of the previous dynasty's downfall, but it also used a simple method to not only solve the current problems of the Great Qin, but also laid the foundation for the future of the Great Qin. Even Li Si and others are far behind. Ying Zheng was greatly shocked in his heart. But on the surface, he remained calm and only looked at Ying Chen's gaze, becoming increasingly satisfied with the subtle and imperceptible. After calming down his emotions, Ying Zheng said calmly. This method, you can write a detailed game theory and submit it later. Yes. Ying Chen respectfully replied. Not arrogant or impatient, not bad. Ying Zheng's heart was even more appreciative. He suddenly thought to himself, why didn't he realize that Gongzichen still has this ability before? Is it that the other party has been hiding, or is it something else? Chinner, you have made great contributions to this method. Tell me, what reward do you want? At this moment, Ying Zheng is in a great mood and is delighted with the beauty of the dragon. What he is currently worried about, one was the nobles of the 6 countries, but this was resolved by Ying Chen's grace order. The second is that the foundation of the eternal Qin dynasty was also compensated for by Ying Chen's using work as a means of relief, which also stabilized the issue of the people's hearts in the Qin dynasty. However, to his surprise, Ying Chen just made a small request. Father Emperor. I would like to request my father, the Emperor, to allow my son to borrow 4,000 stones of grain from the imperial censorate in the imperial palace. 4,000 stones is quite a lot, and Taizong Ling dare not make a decision without authorization. That's why he took this opportunity to request an oral edict. Do you want to implement work as a substitute for relief? You don't need to borrow it. I ordered Taizong to transfer it to you. In just an instant, Ying Zheng understood. Unexpectedly, Ying Chen shook his head. Father cannot. Now is the testing period of the father's emperor. If we favor our children, what will the officials and people of the world think? Please allow our children to be returned in 7 days. Upon hearing this, Ying Zheng was stunned. This son is really different from the others. Surprisingly, he still considers himself. For a moment, he was somewhat moved. But this is just an instant. After reacting, Ying Zheng let out a cold snort, waved his big hand, shook his black imperial robe, and a boundless domineering aura appeared on his face. Humph. Do they dare to oppose what I mean? Seeing this, Ying Chen's gaze froze. According to the plot of the novel, the domineering spirit of the elder brother Zheng must be accompanied by a supporting role. So he quickly bowed and smiled, saying, Father is wise. They naturally dare not, but their courtiers do not want to be unfair, so I still ask Father to fulfill it. Well, a perfect comedian. In the end, Ying Zheng waved his hand and smiled at the corner of his mouth. Go down, I'm sure. Thank you, Father. Congratulations to Ying Chen, thank you very much. Then he gently withdrew from the main hall. Tip. The host has changed the future of Daqin on a small scale, and rewards destiny. 5. Ying Chen paused in his footsteps, with a smile on his face. After he left, Ying Zheng's expression became solemn and he said in a deep voice. Summon Meng Yi, Li Si, and Feng Quji to enter the palace. Yes, Your Majesty. Jisu Neishi Prefecture. At this time, including Fusu and Hu Hai, except for Ying Chen, a total of 8 young masters gathered here. According to the process, after receiving the respective responsible disaster victims, they are about to come to the imperial censorate to request food. Within the mansion, Taizong Qingli Chao had a dark face. His superior Taizong Ling and Wang Sun suddenly fell ill, and the rapid onset of illness caught him off guard. What's even more outrageous is that he still has the strength to handle the reception of the young masters before falling into bed. This made Li Chao have a heart for cursing. Who doesn't know these young masters are difficult to deal with? Hello gentlemen. Seeing that there was still one young master who had not come for a long time, the other young masters also began to urge him and looked unhappy. Li Chao dared not continue to wait. After giving a bow, he spoke up. I am Li Chao, the Prime Minister of Lower Taicang. For this disaster relief, please report the amount of food you need to me. Later, the Imperial Household Department will send someone to deliver it to your mansion. Upon hearing this, everyone turned their gaze to Fusu. Growing up in an orderly manner, as the eldest son of Fusu, no one dares to surpass him and speak up first if he is present. There was a moment of silence. Fusu said gently, I need 100 stones. Li Chao's mouth twitched. I just wanted to say something, but I still held back. Fortunately, although there are more than 100 stones, they are still barely within his authority, and he can still make his own decisions, let alone the fact that the other party is the young Master Fusu. After taking note, other young masters have also been reported one after another. Most of them are around 40 stones, which is also the result of statistics from various young masters and disciples. In the case of not dying from hunger, the greatest effort is made to save food. However, there was also a young master who paid 20 stones. The other young masters frequently looked surprised. It seems that the other party wants to take responsibility for the decision of the over 1,000 refugees he is responsible for, attempting to challenge the limits of human survival. See if eating less than half of the grain will lead to death. Even Li Chao was hesitant to speak, his mouth twitching wildly. He had a premonition that he was going to take the blame. Suddenly, a dull voice came from outside. I need 4,000 stones. Everyone's hearts trembled. What the hell, 4,000 stones of grain? Li Chao's mouth twitched rapidly, almost cursing his mother. Who dares to ask for 4,000 stones with their mouth open? Amidst the shocked gazes of the crowd, Ying Chen walked straight in with a calm expression and a steady pace. P.S. The author doesn't need data, just leave a comment in the comments section. Doghead JPG, Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.